good night, depending on the time of the day you're watching this. As you know, this is not a show about comics. This is about time traveling. See, what time is it for you now, Scotty?
It is 10:03 a.m.
It's 5:03 p.m. in Spain. So we are going to talk about wormholes, black holes, all kind of holes, just not the badly ones. We don't do that. This is about physics. So how is your astrophysics master's going, my friend?
Oh, it's fantastic. I'm pretty solid on anything sciencey. That's what we call it here. We call it sciencey stuff.
Sciencey
stuff. I'm pretty educated. I've read a few books.
Yeah, it's with us, it's either communism or science.
Right.
Anyway,
the big spectrum there.
Yeah. We just go. We don't have middle ground. We just go to extremes. You don't like us, there's a reason. We either communists or we love science, and you're in the middle. Fuck you. Anyway, how's life going? Well, first of all, people with you, the amazing, masterful, incredible, and above all, I love the man, incredible human being, SKOTTIE YOUNG. In this side, the asshole. Nice to meet you. How are you doing? How's the family, my friend?
I'm doing great. All things considered, but I think it's we're doing really good. My family's doing well, and I've adjusted to this weird world, and the kids are doing well, and the studio we're doing great. So I can't complain at all. I'm excited and still making comics and telling stories and doing all this stuff.
What do you miss the most? Imagine my name is Victor Frankenstein. I'm a doctor. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if he's a doctor that you could trust, but I'm a doctor. My name is Dr. Victor Frankenstein, and this Rotary pen just became a to vaccinate.
Right. Okay.
So, pop to you, and like Jim Carrey, I just became God and vaccinated the fucking world. So we're all free. We can go out. We can do whatever we want. What's the first thing that you've been dying to do since last March that you would say, like, okay, I'm going. I'm just doing it now?
It's funny. It's the smaller things, like very like midday on a Thursday where you've worked all week. I've done a cover or two. I got stuck on a script or whatever, and then at noon on Thursday, me and my studio mates and Megan, who runs the business here, we say, you know what, let's just run over to the Peanut. It's our local pub downtown, and right down the street, and let's grab some wings and have a few drinks and reboot. Like little things like that you take for granted. Like you can just this job is drawing comic books is weird because we don't really abide by clocking in and clocking out.
Yeah.
Kids come along and you try to do a schedule, and I try to do 9 to 5 as much as I can, but we also get the benefit of being able to be like, you know what, let's take off for a few hours and just go have a glass of wine and reboot and rethink and discuss some things and get inspired again. It's that especially in the winter, where we couldn't go outside anywhere, that I miss those. I miss those spontaneous moments of date night, where you just say, hey, let's get a babysitter and let's go have cocktails and dinner and chat, because when you're ready to have kids, it's not like you get a lot of quiet time at home to sit and get into deep conversations,
Yeah.
So we always enjoy date night where we go out and start asking each other funky questions and have a good time. So it's stuff like that I miss most.
So you do the same, my wife and I do, that sometimes you're at home, you're looking at each other and you're like, should we call the babysitter? Yeah. Just get the fuck out, grab a glass of wine, grab dinner, just on the spot. You do the same thing because, as you said, we both have 5-6 year olds, so there's times where you just need the quiet. It's like with her, it's like we're with the wine, we're not talking in the restaurant, we're looking at each other, and suddenly we are both like,
I know. Yeah, there's something special about it's it's always nice to plan and you look forward to Friday or Saturday and you have a plan, but I just miss the spontaneity of where we could just make a plan on the fly and just go do it, and luckily we're getting closer to our oldest son is 11 now, so we're inching closer to him being able to watch the younger son, which is going to be way either dangerous or great, one of the two.
Yes. With us, we're hoping that sooner or later she'll be old enough to walk the dog on herself, so I don't have to do it.
There you go.
But I think we still have a long time before that.
Right.
What is the? Do you miss conventions at all?
Yeah, I definitely missed the energy that you get from fans and stuff. But honestly, most of all, that's where I see a lot of my friends, like over the 20 years that I've been doing this, these, people, the other people in comics, these are like my family in a lot of ways, So those 5 to 7 times a year where we all end up in the same hotel lobby bar, or we all end up at the same restaurant or whatever. That's like, I look forward to those moments because that's when I get to catch up with Jonathan Hickman, or I get to catch up with Umberto, or, name any people that's just our benchmarks for the year, or Fabio and Gabrielle, love, like that probably hurt my heart most because I look forward to San Diego every year, not for the con, but for the after con where me and Fabio and Gabrielle meet up and have drinks and talk about whatever comics or art books we found or that year or whatever. Those kind of things I definitely miss.
Yeah, the last year I saw you there, I think it was the last one we could do it. It was, remember, Sunday night, it was you, me, Will Dennis,
yep,
Brandon, who else?
Yep. Yeah, down by the water, right?
Yes. It was like 8 of us, just, I don't know if we were more tired or more rambling about, but it was just me here, just trying to find places to drink.
Yes, yeah, they kept kicking us out of everywhere.
And what is the part you miss the most? As you were saying, the spontaneous, talks with the fans, or seeing your friends, seeing your peers.
Well, definitely seeing the friends. I mean, I've gotten the cool thing, obviously, is we've got Zoom and we've got all these ways to connect with those people still. So I still make sure that we do drink ups on Zoom where we meet up and have some drinks with people. So that I've still filled that square, or checked that box, but it's harder to do the other thing where, going to those conventions and having that line of people there and they're very excited to see you. It's like a good thing that happens when you spend most of your time in a room on your own, or answering emails or signing stuff to be shipped out or stuff like that. Like that's your normal day to day. So it's nice every once in a while when you get in that room and people are like excited. You can feel the energy, like they've been looking forward to this. And, they want to tell you this thing and they want to share this moment, or they share a story. They've read Middle West and they are sharing a story about their life. And like those moments you really can't replace those moments. And those moments don't accidentally take place on Zoom,
Absolutely. Okay. Why, of all the chances, of all the opportunities you had as an artist, did you decide, aside of masochism, that we know to be in comics you have to be a bit of a masochistic?
Oh, 100%.
Let's be honest. But why did you decide to do comics of all the other options they had?
I love to draw. Always did draw since I was younger. I like two things: drawing and music. And I was really into hip hop. And so it was interesting. Like as I was growing up, I really thought I was going to do music more. Like I always drew, but I didn't know how to make that a job. I didn't, I was like, well, maybe I'll make a comic strip because I loved the comic strips and I loved Mad Magazine. So I thought, oh, maybe I'll do something like that. But I didn't know how to make that a job, You
mentioned Mad Magazine, so I had to put this.
Yes. You see this.
Oh, okay. This is better, just so you know, guys.
So I didn't know how to make that a job, but I did understand music. I understood that, like, as I got into high school and I started buying drum machines and turntables and recording equipment, and I understood that I could make music, I could put it in a backpack, and I could go places and I could sell it. So I understood that. And I really thought that that's where I would go. And then by the time we got to Chicago, I fell backwards into it. But I wanted to do it just because I just love the imagination of things. I love making things up and playing pretend on paper. So yeah, it was really just a matter of like, which one of these things is going to work for me? Or in a lot of ways, you look back and you think, I can't believe I thought either one would work, because they are such like pie in the sky kind of jobs. But
both of them are about, in the end, they are both about telling stories, right? So
yeah, they're both about it.
The big part was the urge of telling stories, either being in comics or in music. You just needed to tell the stories.
Yeah, I think there's something about using art to express yourself, to tell your story and to find interesting ways to tell your stories. So yeah, both of them very much especially, growing up listening to hip hop so much, that was a very much a story driven storytelling genre of music, especially in those early years. When I was young, hip hop was just finding itself and becoming a thing. And you had it was telling such deep, great stories that I really connected with that. So I think I found a tie between that and comic books when I started getting there, and really I loved the way that comic books found ways to talk about racism or talk about different social issues, but mask it in superheroes and kind of like a little spoonful of sugar with the medicine to help it go down, where you're learning that stuff. So all that stuff was very appealing to me. And with comics, very much I like the funny stuff. Like, so it was a way for me to kind of like express my humor side as well by, I just grew up, growing up reading man magazines for so long. I fell in love with humor and so really wanted to do that.
You were mentioning hip hop, so I have a question here. Ramsey Hassan tells you, hello, Ramsey, but first, how much was hip hop an influence in your art growing up? And then the second part of his question is, I see a lot of hip hop graffiti cartooning in Young's work and all the comic shout outs in rap lyrics.
For sure. It played a huge part, especially early on. I'd say that it's probably left a little bit over the years, but the visual style, especially in my early work, it definitely carried a lot of that early hip hop skateboard culture art, because I was a skater in high school as well. So all of our decks and clothing had little characters and cool graphics and stickers, and so it was very much an illustrative kind of art driven culture, hip hop and skateboarding. So a lot of that was we graffitied up our skate ramps where we had built ourselves a skate park in one of my friends' dad's old machine shops at a car dealership that had shut down. So we put art all over that, and I draw on my friends' decks, the bottom of their decks, and do paintings and stuff like that. So a lot of that stuff when I was younger infused right into the comic stuff as well. But even as the influence and the art has went away, it's still like, when I was writing and drawing Rocket Raccoon, all my sound effects were always some sort of rap lyric instead of a kapow. It was like, hold up, wait a minute. It was like I was always trying to figure out ways to put lyrics inside of a page somehow.
I'm gonna tell you a story that I don't think I've ever told you in person. When you did Rocket Raccoon, you used a character. The name was Macho Gomez.
Yes.
You know who that is, right?
That's you.
Yes. I told you the story then.
Yeah, you told me the story. Yeah, the first time we met, you told me. I was like, what? And that's great. I love that, because I also love the design of that character.
That was the name of the artist is
it's
Seldon Bellia.
Yes, I have so many originals from him.
Yeah,
he is amazing.
Yes, he is. And he gave me. I think I told you. I bought 3 of the originals of the first issue of Deadpool, where Macho Gomez was not the first one, because the editor got that for himself,
right?
But Seldon, without me asking even, he sent me all the designs.
Oh,
he included them in the box, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I literally just picked that character to be in the book because of how great he looked. Like,
yes,
I was such a big fan
with the coffee cup in the comic.
He's such a great illustrator. So yeah, it was such a fun, wacky design. But yeah, for sure.
Just so you know, guys, the story is about. Well, you'll find out. You'll find a character named Macho Gomez, and then you'll find the story. This is about Scottie, not about me. So we think Paula Ventimiglia says hello. Megan Hodges says, "Hey, David and Scottie." She's the boss. So,
hey, boss.
Hey, boss. Victor Rakiu, hi from Colombia. Mr. Young, Danny Serrano, Casabon. Hi, David. Hi, Scottie. Big fan here since I saw you in Venom. I even managed to get an original page from issue 16. Sadly, to stayed in my ex-girlfriend's house when we broke up. So each time I see your work, I think of her. That's weird, I know.
I'm sorry.
Too much information.
Yeah, I feel like somebody needs to give him a hug.
Yes, Danny. You know what would fix that? You just buy another page.
Yes.
And in this case, don't give it to any girlfriend.
Megan will take care of you.
Exactly. Victor, Mr. John, how were your first steps in comics? Your first job, and how did you feel when you got in?
My first job in comics was at Marvel. I did a fill-in issue of Iceman #3. The regular series artist, I didn't know him at the time. We have since become friends for years, but Carl Kerschel, it was one of his first projects as well when he was young and breaking in. And they needed a fill-in issue for his like 4-issue series. So I did issue 3. And it was crazy. It was kind of unreal because I hadn't really drawn that many comic pages. Mm-hmm. So it was definitely like a fake it till you make it situation where I got offered the job and I was like, sure. I mean, I was trying to get into comics, but you know, you don't think that your first job is going to be at Marvel. You know, I thought I was going to do some indie books and kind of learn the ropes and get up there. And so it was really great, but it was also pretty terrifying to do, like to be on that stage right out of the gate. So I definitely was scared. There's also a weird thing that, you know, I don't know, I was 22, I think, 20, 21, 22, 23, somewhere around there. And so I was still young and not, I thought like, oh man, when you get my first comic comes out and it's on the shelf, you're going to be like, oh, there it is, and be blown away and be really excited. But weirdly enough, you're like, there's enough distance between you having done it and then it being on the shelf that by the time you see it, you just see so many mistakes.
Yeah.
And you're just like, it took years for me to get that feeling of like, oh my God, that's my book and it's published, you know. It might have taken till like maybe till I did I Hate Fairyland, where it was like something that I had made up out of my, you know, created and it had the image eye on it, which I thought was awesome. But no, it felt good and it was, but mostly scary.
Yeah, Carlos Pacheco told me that it took him, I would say, 10 to 15 years to start, you know, having a mantra, which is page delivered, page forgotten.
Yeah.
Because before that, he couldn't. He just saw, you know, as you said, 2 months, right. 2 months he saw the issue, and I was like, oh my God, this is so many mistakes. I hate it. But it's a decade to be able to get some distance. Did it happen to you?
Sometimes it's years before I even look at a published issue of a comic, because most of the time I'm 3 issues past it anyway. I'm already working, you know, I'm working 3 issues past it, and so I'm just focused on what's in front of me. But yeah, a lot of times I've gotten to that place where I'm just like, I'm happy on the day. I scan it, turn it in, and we're done. And there we go. And we move on. And I like having the book on my shelf, and I just imagine it's all perfect on the inside.
When you started, did you ever think about, because we were asking about the first day, did you ever think that someday you would write for somebody else, or the idea was there since the beginning?
No, I didn't actually ever think. I always thought that I would write for myself. I always thought that I was just going to get in and make my own comics and to do everything. And then, like I said, I kind of fell into Marvel as my first job. So then that was, you know, for 10 years or so, that's what I did. And it wasn't until my first writing, the first time I wrote something was at Marvel, and they asked me to do a monster story. They were doing like a 5th week event or whatever, where they were doing like flip book monster stories with the Marvel monsters. And they asked me to draw one. And I was like, well, do you care if I just write it too? I mean, at this point I had been doing some animation work on the side and, you know, dealing with story a lot, and I'd drawn enough comics at this point. And I was like, I really want to start writing. You know, I always intended to do that. So he was like, oh yeah, sure. So I literally just asked, and they're like, sure. So I wrote and drew this 14-page story. And they're like, oh, this is really cool. And it wasn't, then I did an X-Men short. And then after that, this is to Nick Lowe's credit. Nick asked me if I wanted to, he asked me if I wanted to write a short for one of those X-Men, like, remember the X-Men events and like Manifest Destiny or whatever, or Divided We Stand. Afterwards, they'd always do like an anthology with short stories.
Yeah.
And so he asked me to do one of those and said, hey, well, do you want to write it and have somebody else draw it? And I was like, well, I guess, yeah, that'd be kind of fun. Like, I'd never done that. And so I did that with Dan Panosian. I did a Juggernaut story with Dan Panosian. And that's where I got the itch, where I was like, wow, that was cool. Like, I just thought up ideas, wrote them, and my part was done. You know, I was like, that was way less less like stress on me. So I did that, and then again, Nick was always a big champion of my writing, and he had me pitch a Magneto miniseries, and so that was my first series that I had written, a miniseries that I had written with Clay Mann on art, and that was again just really cool. And what I realized was that gave me the itch to start doing it more, because I realized I was going to get to tell a wider range of stories, because I do a specific thing and I fit for these specific stories. And I'm okay to say and admit, I don't fit some of these other stories, but I still have those stories in my head, like the Magneto story that I wrote, that wouldn't have made sense if I would have drawn it. It was dark and it was heavy, and there was, it was big superheroic moments, and that it wouldn't have felt the same way. And so I loved I loved getting the chance to expand my storytelling abilities past my drawing abilities. I'm always going to be able to draw the way I draw, so I'll write the stories that fit for me, and then then I was like, wow, this is really cool to write like this, or even like doing Middle West, getting to the place where Middle West was a very, very personal tale, but I don't know that I could have achieved the scope of what we accomplished with that book without Jorge's amazing mind. He took.
See, Daniel Puches was asking about that. I like Middle West a lot. Why did you decide not to do the drawing yourself? I love Corona's work anyway, but I was curious if it was a matter of lack of time or any other reasons.
Really, there was a few things. I think I knew that what kind of story I wanted to tell, and because I was putting so much of my own life in it and personal stuff, I needed there to be a little distance from the art as well, because I didn't want to get to a place where, I don't want to say laziness, but at times when you're drawing and something's going to be hard, and you do look at the schedule and you're like, you know what, I'm going to edit this. Yeah. Because I don't know that I'm going to be able to pull it off. So I know I do that, and I didn't want to do it with this project. So if I had big ideas and I had big things, then I wanted to be able to attempt that. So I think if I would have drawn it, it would have been a much smaller story.
Also, sorry to interrupt. Did you need a kind of emotional separation? I mean, having somebody else do the art allows you to tell it more in a personal way than if you draw it yourself. Because I think that if you draw it yourself, you could be, taking distance, even if you didn't want to, because it could get too emotional when you draw it. It's
that, but also it allowed me to stay in the emotion. So what I liked was the fact that I was able to stay on the script and not. So what happens when I draw a book is I write the script, then I push the keyboard aside, and for 30 days I'm drawing it. And drawing, while yes, being emotional from time to time, still is about the craft and the tech. And at some point you become a technician, and so you're kind of tightening bolts and pulling levers and pushing buttons for 30 days. And I kind of did not want to turn off the emotional side and then get back to the script and try to find a way to turn it back on. What the great thing that I got to do with writing is, while Jorge was drawing an issue, I just kept going. So while I was in it, if I found that issue run where I was in the emotion, I would write 3 or 4 issues, just keep going and kind of live. Now that also was difficult, there were definitely times where, I'd be at the bar writing, I'd take a break, go at the bar, and like, you're feeling emotional and you're feeling heavy because you deal with this stuff and you just wrote X amount of pages and you're like, wow, this is a lot of place to live in. But I felt like it gave us a better book because I was able to really stay in that headspace for longer periods of time and not break.
I hadn't considered that, but that's something that you were in the zone. Yeah. So if you have to break it because you have to draw, you go out of the zone, believe it whether or not. So you lose that momentum, right? That 100%. So you can, if you can continue just writing while you're in the zone, that makes for a much better book, right?
100%. Yeah. It just, because you write these characters and at some point, especially as you get into the further issues, you have them down so well, and you have each one of them. And then when you start having these multiple conversations, if you can stay in that, it's great. And so, yeah, so there's a lot of different reasons that played into it. But I think, yeah, definitely giving myself a little distance from the emotion of it. And then, but also being able to keep myself in the emotion of it. I think those two were the big factors. And like Jorge just draws circles around me. So I made a smart choice.
But I love it that you said that one of the reasons to be a writer, sometimes only the writer of the book, allows you to write the stories you feel you can draw. And Grant, I know Grant, and I read Alan Moore, have spoken about the same thing. There's stories I can tell as a writer that I will never be able to tell as an artist. So for you, it's also being only the writer in some cases does also feel liberating. That this is a kind of story that I know I can't draw, but I know that if I focus on the writing, I can tell it, and I need to tell that story.
Right. And it gives me time to, what I've loved about it is it's given me time to get better and better at the craft of writing. When I draw it, I'm probably going to play it safe most of the time, because I know how much time I have. I know how long it takes me to do the art. So I'm going to have all that in mind when I'm crafting the story. And sometimes I don't want to have that in my mind. I want to be able to push as far as the story or idea needs it to go. Now on things like I Hate Fairyland, I love it because I just do whatever I want and I go full force at it. But now that's not to say that I'm not, like, I'm definitely itching in that place now where it's like, okay, now it's time to push myself and find what that other stories are for me to draw. Cause it's been a couple of years now since I've drawn any books myself. So it's definitely, this is the year I think that I'm getting ready to grab it again.
So the itch to write has been covered for a while. Now you need to go back to the other one.
I need to go do both again.
Yes, you should go back to this one.
Right.
Entintador, which says, a genius, hello from Bolivia. Let me see. Tito James tells you, long time fan of your work. What can you do in cartoony comics that you can't do in more realistic ones?
Well, definitely humor is a really big thing. You can, I find that being a cartoonist and being more of a cartoonist and less of a realistic or representational artist allows me to break all the rules. Like I can stretch a face as wide or as long or as crazy as I want to sell you on a moment, whether it's fear or laughter or anything. I can really push that stuff. So I think that cartoony comics really just allow you to break the walls of reality and let you really sink into imagination and explore all the human emotions in the most extreme kind of ways.
Let me see. Hello, everyone. Pedro de Mercader says, thank you for the laughs, Mr. Young. Your Marvel babies are just lovely. How did you come up with them?
God, that's another one of those like weird accidental fell into it situations. I had done four covers for a mini series called X Babies in 2009 or 10, and people liked them, but it wasn't a craze or anything. They were just like, oh, cool. Moved on. I had done the Marvel babies for the badges at Heroes Con one year. Sheldon asked me to do the badges for him, and he's like, oh, I saw those covers that you did. How about you do like X Babies, whatever. I was like, okay, cool. Like, again, it wasn't my thing. I just was like, cool, I like drawing that stuff. So I did it. And then it wasn't until the big X-Men versus Avengers event, or Avengers versus X-Men event at Marvel in 2012, that Midtown Comics wanted an exclusive variant for their store and for the thing. And George Belliard, who does all the cover, who did all the cover programs at the time, they suggested me, or they asked for me, one of the two. But George suggested, hey, he does these really cool like Marvel babies. You guys want him to do that? And they were like, oh yeah, that'd be great. Like throw back to the old Arthur Adams stuff or whatever. But I leaned in even further and like literally made them baby. Like that first cover. So I did a wraparound cover. There's like 33 characters on it. But as the joke, because they always call them X babies, but they were really toddlers just running. So like as the joke, I leaned hard in and like gave them pacifiers and diapers. And I like literally made them babies, right? Pulling each other's hair and doing baby stuff as the joke. And then that cover sold like 1 trillion copies for Midtown. And when that happened, then David Gabriel was like, oh, we had Marvel Now getting ready. After Avengers versus X-Men was the big Marvel Now initiative, which is, if people remember or don't remember, everybody was switching books. Mm-hmm. So Jason Aaron was going from whatever, I think he was on maybe X-Men at the time. And then he was moving and doing Thor and he, now we didn't know at the time, but now is one of the most legendary Thor runs of all time, right? It's amazing. So he started on Thor and Brian Bendis left it. Everybody was switching. So there's a big slew of #1 books coming. And so David Gabriel said, hey, do you want to do 10 covers? And I was like, I had never been assigned 10 covers at once. Like I'd get a cover job here or there, or I'd be the regular cover series artist on a kid's book or whatever, or Cable Deadpool, side books. But I was like, 10 covers? And they were like, yeah. So I was like, okay. And so I did 5, and then they realized the orders were starting to come in big. And so when I was 5 in, he was like, do you want 5 more? I was like, okay. And so over the course of the next weeks, they just kept asking me if I wanted more. And so within the next few months, I had 1 or 2 covers a week for almost the entire calendar year scheduled out. And I was like, and since then, that was 2012, and it's 2021 now. And I still have at least one cover a week. Like right now, I think I'm 3 months in, 4 months ahead with 1 cover a week looking at the calendar, and it's never stopped. So it's one of those things where it's like, I never considered it to be my thing, but somehow it became one. Like I still view it as my side hustle. Like I write and I draw comics and I do all this other stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, I also once a week hop over here and I do one of those covers. But to a lot of people, that's just what I do, which is fine. But it definitely for me is a way to scratch that comic strip itch, because I don't view them as cool covers. I view them as a way to make jokes and have gags. So it's like doing Far Side comics for me, like that one image, what can I do with this one image as a joke,
Oh, do you remember how many did you do for that Marvel Now moment?
Well, I want to say every #1 that came out. I can't remember. I mean, at this point, I think we are definitely in the 500 zone of how many I've done since 2012. We're a lot. CB just asked me the other day, but I think we have to have somebody go count or figure it out, because I lost count ages and ages ago.
Ramsey Hassan tells you we are in a golden age where there is lots of great indie comics made, but it's almost like white noise of content, where it's easy to get lost in the cacophony. Do you have any advice on how to stand out?
I just think it's really about telling your truth. I think it's just if you're going to make, it really depends too. I mean, are you looking to write and draw comics? Are you looking to just draw comics? Just write comics? It really depends on what path you're looking for. But I think as a whole, it's about looking what's out there, seeing what's out in the world, seeing what kind of stories you want to tell or what kind of art you want to make, and just going for it. There is no secret to standing out other than standing out. If you post a lot and you're good, you're gonna rise to the top. It will happen. There's no other secret but then to do the hard work and then keep doing the hard work and then work hard some more and that's it. And not be afraid to put yourself out there. I think that's been my biggest thing. I think that I'm probably better at putting myself out there than I am at actually making the stuff I put out, because I'm good at, I talk a lot and I'm like a big character. And so that's helped me a lot in that ways. But good work speaks for itself, whether it's great stories you're writing or beautiful art you're making. It'll stand out.
Just so you have fun. Hank Lee is a store owner, bigger store in Amsterdam.
Awesome.
Hank, this one,
cool.
Coincidentally have this one. This is his business card. I'm not kidding.
That's awesome. I got a map and everything. That's great.
Yeah, this is the business card of his store. So
that's
he
hilarious.
just made a comment saying, and you're going to love this, we have a separate SKOTTIE YOUNG cover section in our back issue bins at the store.
Yes, I love that. I love when people go all around the country and all around the world and send me pictures of like, hey, I walked into the store and there's a whole wall of you, or it's I love when that stuff starts popping up in different places.
It's amazing. Something I love to see is that, when the Spanish edition, they decide to use one of your variants.
Mm-hmm.
I always say, okay, that's gonna sell.
Right.
And they know it. They know that if they put it, it's gonna sell. So it's like, okay, we need this book to sell more. So we're going to use one of the Scottish colors. So, it helps
awesome.
in Spain.
I love it.
Hello, Hank. Daniel Puch asks you, what do you think about manga outselling comics? Do you think American comics need to rebrand or take a different approach to keep the industry on top again?
I don't know. I mean, I just view it all as comics.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, manga is just comics, right? I do think that manga speaks. I do think that manga speaks to a younger audience
mm-hmm.
by having a very wide range of genres that they cover. I think that American comics are getting better, and I think that our version of that is happening. I think more in the book market, and it's some of the more indie companies like Image and Boom and things like that, where you are getting books like Lumberjanes and Raina's book Smile, and there's definitely that's happening in a different way.
Dogman sold 1 million.
The Dogman books. Oh my gosh, yeah. So the thing is I think when we ask those questions, we often really are saying, why does this outsell superhero comics,
mm-hmm.
right? And that's tough to a whole medium versus one genre of American comics, which is superhero comics. But I would love to figure it out, because my son, my oldest son's 11, and I've drawn comics. I've been a professional known comic book artist and writer his whole life. And he is like, cool, that's cool, but loves manga. Like, has read all of Hero Academia, My Hero Academia, has read all of Naruto. Like, he's making his way through One Piece. And right there, the 3 books that I just named are A Superhero School, a ninja squad, and then a ninja training and pirates. So
Pirates.
3 different genres and 3 very, very popular manga series. We can't say the same in America. We don't have that many pirate comics. So but I just think it's about outreach. I think it's about finding the audiences and just seeing where they are and how we can reach them. And I think, like I said, I think we're doing much better with that and finding books that are palatable for the younger readers.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I was discussing it the other day with another guest, and we were talking about, and this is something that is in the 176 that I've done in 11. Oh my God, in 11 months. It's something that it was recurring as a theme, which is back in a few years ago, when superhero comics used to be, between brackets, more for kids, you had that gap where you moved from superhero comics and the next thing you had was Vertigo.
Right.
There was nothing in the middle, so you could lose a lot of people there.
Right.
But I think right now, American comics are doing much better, because you have Raina, you have Dogman, and then you have a lot of young adult stuff that is being made by DC, by Boom, as you said, with Lumberjanes, by Image, and a lot of other companies, including, and I put, I'm weird, I know, I Hate Fairyland. I think that's in that book, and your old books are also there.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think that those fall in there. And even right now, that was very much my intention when I pitched for Strange Academy, was seeing a landscape of entertainment that I felt like we weren't really grabbing a hold of in comics. And that's not to say, obviously we've had X-Men schools and things like that. And so I'm not the first school book, but our intent really was to do a school book, but make it legitly about kids coming of age. And they happen to have magic powers, but mostly when you read Strange Academy, it's really about kids learning who they are. And it's about kids learning how to interact with other kids who are different and those things. And I think that speaks to that age group. So I think, even us at Marvel are starting to realize, like, oh, cool, let's go and grab some other groups and age brackets here.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important point that you touched there, which is in the past when they did you know, books with kids, let's call it like that, it was about the superpowers.
Right.
It wasn't about the experience of being a kid. And that's something that manga does really well, or right now, those kind of books. They talk about the person. Then you have the rest, but the person and their experience and the coming of age and their maturity, not maturity, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the focus. And that's what you two guys are trying to touch on, right? It's the people, and then the powers are secondary. That's not the main point, right?
Right. Exactly. The fighting the bad guy for me is always my B or C plot. And my A plot is always, you know, Desi, a demon from limbo, trying to figure out how to express that she likes somebody. She's never felt like this before. She's only dealt with the darker side of her name is short for despair. And she's a demon who holds all that emotion from her side. So she's learning, like we all learn when we hit that age, to, oh my God, I like somebody. How do I know that? How do I know who I like? How do I express that to them? Will I be rejected? Those kind of things to me that's the funner stuff to me than like punch a bad guy, even though we got that cool stuff in there too. But I think if we can make you care about that stuff, then you care even more when they're in jeopardy later from the big bads.
And I think that's the matter that lasts with readers. I mean, I always remember, and people tell me I'm with for that, but I think it's the main point of what Peter David did in XFactor. Mm-hmm. I remember one issue when I suddenly realized, oh, Rain is acting like that because she's in Heat.
Right.
And people was like, and you think I think that's incredible that a writer thinks that the main point of that story is to tell her side, you know, her animal side, her wolf side, is in Heat. Nobody thought about that, but that's character. That tells you who she is and why she struggles every day. Because there's a part of her physiology that makes her act in a certain way that us humans won't understand.
Exactly.
So what he did, you know, I don't know if you remember the issue he did with Yo-Q, you know, where he explored with Doc Samson the psychology of each character. Mm-hmm. Why Quicksilver gets bored because for him everybody else moves in a slow motion. That's what I was missing in superhero comics. I always say, if we want to reach that audience that we don't have, we don't really have the superheroes, we already have the superpowers, maybe we should touch on who these people is.
Right.
Do you agree on that?
Oh, 100%. I love, it's my favorite comics are always those comics. My favorite comic of all time is Joe Kelly in Ken Nomura's I Killed Giants. And that's pretty much all about that. It's all about a girl coming of age and dealing, I don't want to spoil it because I think that the book's too important to spoil, but a girl coming of age and dealing with something in her life that is too big and too, a monster size big, and that I remember stories like that far more than I ever remember, Apocalypse getting punched or whatever, and that's not to say that that's not super fun. That is super fun.
It is.
But I love when comics can really do both. And I think we're getting way more of those books now in the big diverse pool of writers that we have throughout comics now. And we're starting to, read about relationships a lot more. And we're reading about, parent, me, Jorge and I basically just went and did a book that said it was a journey fantasy book, but was really 18 issues of a kid dealing with an abusive family and an abusive father, but also a father dealing with his past and wishing that he wasn't the way, so that book's really about that, but also has tornado monsters, but I think as long as you can find a core first and you have that, then you can sprinkle all the fun stuff on top. I totally agree.
See, you have somebody making fun of you. Humberto Ramos, what? Who's that guy you're talking to? Is he a kid trying to break in?
Tell Humberto to get back on to work.
Well, okay. And by the way, Humberto is also one of those guys that many years ago, he was already trying to tell those stories about, in his own with Crimson, without their revelations. He was telling those stories about kids maturing and, trying to know who they are.
Those are the books I learned from. That's why he played that. That's why I absolutely love that we have teamed up on Strange Academy after years of being friends, because the books that he drew that I came up loving were all exactly what we're talking about. Deviate was a book about, weird kids put in a pretty not great situation and how they dealt with it. Like you said, Out There, and Crimson was 100% that. Like, basically, here is a kid who is taken over by something that he did not choose, and how does he deal with that? Losing his family, losing his friends, like all of that stuff was first, and then there was vampire stuff, and Out There obviously was the same way, and so having that as having those projects as my compass, it really gave me my roadmap for where I am as a storyteller today. And that's why I'm so grateful that we got to do this book together, because he is the master of that already. So, and I've learned from all that. So
yeah, well, but we said too many things, too many nice things about him already. So go back to Rob. We hate you. He says in capital letters, "I am working."
I know he is.
Those crazy books you write don't draw by themselves,
I make Umberto mad on a daily basis.
And we know Umberto. He can be doing a lot of things at the same time and work.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a master.
Let's go back to music.
Okay.
Because you mentioned it before. If I ask you what is comic storytelling in terms of that, is it a symphony? Is it jazz? Or is it rock and roll?
I think it is. Oh man, that's interesting. I think it's rock and roll in the way that it's. I think it's much more. It's rock and roll in that way that it's much more gritty, and I don't mean adult and dark. I mean it's grimy in the way that we make it. It's independent. We've got very little tools. We don't need a lot of money. All you need is some really good ideas and some pencil and paper, and you can make it. And I think rock and roll is that way. And you just need some emotion and a couple instruments. It doesn't really matter how great they are. But if you put all the right instruments together and the right players together, it could be two people, like rock and roll could be Meg White and Jack White, like crushing it album after album, just two people and drums and a guitar. Or it could be, the Who, but it's all still coming from a place of, it all starts in a garage, where I think that's how I feel when I make comics. I feel like we're improvising, like, because it's fast too. Like most of the time you don't have 4 years to ramp things up before everybody sees it. A lot of times you're like, I got an idea. We solicit it and we're like, oh, now we're running. Now we're like, okay, what's the idea? Okay, you draw it, blah, 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 you color it. And we're kind of going, and it's the same way as I think picking up a guitar and being like, all right, I'm going to start this riff. And then a drummer coming along, and everybody's kind of improvising their part until we get going. And then like you play together for a while, like, oh, now we're kind of well oiled. Where comics can be that, but I think it gets to that later when it's like, when it's like, okay, we've got a year to plan this book out, and it's going to be fully painted. And, every panel is like, it can be that, but it's way more thought out. And I think the symphony of comics comes later.
The symphony, I think about symphony when I see this.
Oh, wow.
When I see, Mobius doing have you seen this? The French, they just did all of the blueberry ones.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Pure black and white.
Wow. That's awesome. I love how big it is.
In this album size, but
yeah,
it's really cheap and amazing. If you want me to get some, and then when I see you take them to you, that's why I call a symphony. When I see Mobius, it's like, okay, comics can be symphonies.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I'm saying. You get to that. I think just like anything, it starts off here, and then it goes to another place. Like the Who starts off here, and then all of a sudden later they're doing concept albums, and they've got a full situation. It's just like big. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a mixture, but starts here and grows to something.
But what's fun is that if every time I ask British people, they tell me it's punk.
I get that. Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't know. For me, it's hip hop because hip hop to me is America's punk music.
Yeah.
Like it, you know, I think punk music in the UK came out of the angst of their time and their music and everything, and they were fighting against, you know, going against the grain of their culture at the time. I think hip hop became that. I think hip hop was the next version of that for us. In some ways, rock and roll was here way back in the day, you know, but I think hip hop always reminded me of that. That was going against, you know, saying things they're not supposed to say, telling stories that people haven't told yet in music. You know, the songs weren't only about love and holding somebody's hand. And, you know what I mean? Like, this was like, kind of, we're going to give you a window. We're going to give you a front row seat to the life that we're living, and it's not always going to be great.
Yeah.
So I can see that being, I can see that punk being a good answer.
Yeah. A friend from Philly, not in comics, once told me that for him, comics, music, and the relation with comics and music more clear for him was Eminem. He said, for me, Eminem is comics, in the sense that you can do hip hop.
Yeah.
You can talk about something funny at the same time. In 3 seconds, go really deep and change the tone in a second.
Yep.
Because I don't think anything but hip hop and comics can do that. Do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think
absolutely?
About
I think I agree with that. I do think that hip hop especially is very largely character driven.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody makes up a fake name, right? Like everybody has a persona.
Yeah.
And then you have somebody like Eminem who has multiple personas. I mean, then you have like, you have Wu-Tang who's you know, they've got each 3 nicknames, and each one of them has a specific comic book character that, you know, Method Man is Johnny Blaze, and, you know, there's Tony Stark, and each one of them have actually adopted a legit comic book name. So yeah, I agree with that. I've never thought about it like that, but I do think that that's true, because hip hop is all designed to be a different character, a different persona than what you are, and you are sharing stories that sometimes are bigger than the life, but still representational of something. So that's a good point. I'm going to use that.
Yeah, by the end of the day, you know, it's superheroes and larger than life,
right?
And for me, and I know hip hop, of course, a lot less than you do. I've always thought about hip hop about something that is also larger than life.
Yeah, for sure. And there's always been the cool thing too is hip hop and comics share such crazy good DNA as well. There's almost no, I mean, the number of comic book references in and out of hip hop lyrics my entire life is never ending. You know, from Biggie Smalls to Swollen Members in Canada to you know, there's a current MC now, independent MC named Echo, who, I mean, he literally does not have one song where there's not 4 comic book references, and all his TikTok videos, his whole house is just comic book stuff behind him, right? And he's a sick MC, but yeah, so I think that they've shared a common DNA since the beginning.
Mm-hmm. When you write for yourself or for somebody else, has it ever happened to you that your characters start fighting you? Not literally. I know you're not crazy, but
right,
you know,
right.
First arc, second arc, everything is going fine, smooth, nice, and suddenly you get to the third arc. You're about to finish the story, and the characters are like, "Nope, I'm not that character. You're wrong. Correct. I'm not going to let you finish until that's the way."
That's interesting. That's a really interesting question. I absolutely think that is probably currently happening to me with Strange Academy, because we have
Humberto. We know it's Humberto's fault.
Right. we have so many characters there, and as we go, they're revealing new things about themselves to me, because you can't help, like, writing conversation is interesting because you get on one side and you start the conversation on one side, and then you go, how does this other character respond? Not how do I respond, but how does this other character that we created respond? And when you do that, when you go back and forth for a while, you start realizing, like, oh, I didn't know this about this character. So, you know, in some ways, Doyle Dormammu has become something that I didn't think he was at the beginning. He's a different, I connect with him so much more than I thought that I ever would, you know. At first I just thought, like, oh, he'll be the mean guy who you're not sure about. And now it's just like, I just love that character, you know. I think Middle West was Middle West was definitely one of those times where, you know, you have your character, and we had Abel, and I had him be such a, I don't want to say just a victim, but he was a hurt kid. And that's who he was a lot of the time. And then somewhere along the way, even though I had the exact idea where that story was going, he did start to fight against me a little bit in that way that he needed to say, I'm also not perfect. Stop writing, kind of telling me to stop writing imperfect.
Yeah.
And so near the end, he has to become a little bit of the monster, because he needs to realize, oh my God, I got to work harder to not do that. So yeah, I do think that there's times where they reveal themselves to you, and it's not always exactly what you want, but that's good. That shows you that, I think, as not just a writer, but as a person, you're listening to people, and you're listening to people when they tell you about yourself, and you're listening to people when they're talking about their life. And that means we change. And I think that being open to letting your character changes, I think, is a good thing.
And that also tells you that the characters that that you know your characters better.
Right.
But at the same time, it tells you a lot about yourself, right? Because I ask many people, to writers, my follow-up questions to this used to be, okay, you know the characters better, but does that mean that you discover things about yourself as a human being that you didn't know before?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think it's, writing characters is not, aside from the amount of time that it takes, it's not dissimilar to having kids, right? Where before you have kids, you think, oh, I'll have kids and I'll teach them how to do everything, and I'll teach them about life, and I'll give them all the lessons, and I'll make them these great little humans, right? And then you have kids and you realize, like, oh, they are teaching me all the things. Like, I didn't realize that I could be as patient as I have become. They have taught me how to do that because of the interaction, the two-way street that you realize you're on. It's not a teacher-student situation. It is, we're human beings coexisting, and you are sometimes a megaphone, and sometimes you're a mirror, and sometimes you're a sponge. And so you don't know which one of those you're going to get on which day, but almost at the end of every day, I've learned something else about myself, good or bad, you know? Yeah. And I find that having kids, for me, opened myself up to realizing when I'm not great, you know, when I'm not being the best version of me at any given time. And I'm more open to seeing it and admitting it and trying to change it because of them. And I feel like that is a very similar thing to writing. When you create these things and these people and these characters, and then you take them down a path, and at some point you realize, like, oh, might not be how I think, Scottie, but I think I need this character to think this way. And they are thinking that way. And they're teaching me, sometimes taking a character this way teaches me in real life how to deal with that situation, because I've got to solve the problem. You know, like, I've got to solve that problem, and then that way that these characters act. So yeah, I think it's like, it could be very similar to parenting in a lot of ways. The same kind of lessons you learn about yourself.
Absolutely. Umberto asked you, do you look fit? Are you working out handsome?
Oh, I am. Thank you, Umberto. Hey. Yes, I got a Peloton, one of those bikes, you know, the stationary bikes, and I ride it 30, 45 minutes a day. So I've been doing that for months, and I'm about 25 pounds down. So yeah, it's been working well. And
we don't get that many convention food, Umberto, which always helps. You know, the belly goes down, and, you know, we're healthier. You know.
Well, I'll tell you what, the beginning of COVID was definitely, the numbers were going up.
Oh, no. Mine the same thing. I think I got like 18 pounds.
Yeah.
Like the third 4 months. And then I bought a bike too. And,
oh, cool.
So I've gone like 16, 17 already, you know, down.
Yes.
But then the smoking went really high. and I quit. As you said about learning from the kids. There was a moment when my kid, who stood at home a lot, started to tell me, Dad, you have to stop, to quit smoking. And when the kid tells you, that's when you think about it in a different way. And I quit smoking in January.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. So it was that, the COVID gave me a really bad thing because I getting on a lot of weight. Then I lost it, and then I quit smoking. So you know what?
You know what? That's really
a
great. I know. Listen. I know what kind of challenge that is because I smoked a pack or more a day for 14, 15 years.
Oh no, much more for me. It was since I was 13.
Well, that's what mine was, but I quit in 2008. So from 14 on, I did as well, and then I quit in January of 2008. Casey and I quit. My wife and I quit, and I thought it would never work because I loved smoking. I loved it, but somehow it worked, and I have, now I'm at that place where I don't even know how many years later it is. What is it? 12, 13 years now. I've not smoked for as long as I smoked now. Mm-hmm. And just right there at that place. And it's so crazy. I will tell you that I don't even remember really doing it now. Like it's one of those things, but I also remember those first 6 months where you feel like somebody chopped your hand off. So congratulations, man.
I tested myself a couple of weeks ago. First time I went with a friend for lunch, and he smokes like like a bus driver, like 3 packs a day.
Right.
The kind of guy, that smokes and, leads this next one with the other one. Just like that. And I was with him, and he was like, "Oh, so you quit smoking?" And I was like, "Yeah, can I smoke? Like, give me one." I was like, "No, you quit smoking 3 months ago." No. I'm testing myself. Don't worry about that. So I took one, and literally by half of it, I was like,
right.
I threw it away, and I was like, that was good. Like, what?
Yeah.
Because I'm at that point when if I try it, it's just disgusting.
Yeah, that's great. That's the perfect place to be. Mine was when I started realizing how bad I smelled. Where I was like, once you get far enough away from it, and you like your senses come back, and then you're around somebody who smokes, you're like, "Oh, did I smell like that all the time?" And they're like, "Yes, you did."
It's funny because my wife quit smoking a month before I did, and she was all months telling me, "You smell like," and I was like, "You were smoking a month ago," and she was like, "Yeah, I got this back."
That's so funny.
Wait until you did it, until you do it. And you're right. The moment I did it, I was like 2 meters away, 3 meters away. I could smoke and smell it. Right. I was like, that was, oh my God. And my hair and my beard, like, deal. So back to your thing. When you're about to create a story, a pitch, or something else, do you go to a place? Do you think about it from a place of a structure? I mean, this is how it has to start. This is structured. I get to the middle, and this is how I get to the end. Or from an emotional point of view, what gets you into a story and to say this is a story that I want to tell?
Well, I think it's different each time. So, Middle West I knew the emotional notes that I wanted to hit, but I also knew exactly where I needed that to begin and end. The middle was like, okay, what's the journey along the way? But I knew what was going to start the journey and what the end was going to be, between the two of them. So that was a combo between having the emotional core at the beginning, but needing it to have a structure to get there, and to be able to weave in all the stuff. Now, something like there's a book that's not announced yet, Jorge and I's next book, which is a 5-issue series, that is a kind of horror / haunted love story. Love is what we're going to use as a loose word. That was much more of me saying, I've always wanted to write a scary story, and do a horror book. And then, so I went to Colorado last year before everything shut down, and we were literally listing things that we wanted to do, like books that we'd want to do together in the future. So on the list, I was like, oh, I want to do like a romance book, and I want to do a horror book.
Romance books need to come back, big time.
Right?
Comics need it.
We kind of did. We combined those a little bit, and so it's kind of like I don't want to give too much away, but anyway, it touches on the romance, it touches on the horror, then it gets a little weird. But that one started off as that, like we knew a tone, and we knew what kind of aesthetics we wanted. And then I backed my way into what the story was. I found then it was like, okay, well, what if this? And here. But that one started completely with aesthetics and genre and just trying to find our way into that. And then once we got that and we started to build a structure, then that's when you start weaving you into it and the personal stuff and people. And so that one was kind of the other way. Then you have things like I Hate Fairyland, which is, I just want a character who's a cipher for whatever I'm in the mood for right now. So, like she was like, I need a microphone for me to say the stuff that gets on my nerves and exercise my demons, right? So it's like, if I have to watch one more episode of fill in the blank terrible kids cartoon, I'm going to lose it. So I can have Gert do that in I Hate Fairyland. But also, if I just watched Aliens and really feel like I want to have Gert like blasting on some aliens, I can do a parody comic of that really quick, and where instead of getting trapped in a ship, she goes in Larry's hat, which ends up being a giant Amazon-like warehouse that's now been infested with lint, and the lint are these crazy aliens, So that is, each book represents a different version of the kind of storytelling that I want to be a part of.
And do you think that, following that, do you think is there any limits to the stories you can tell in comics?
Oh, no, I don't think there's any limits whatsoever. I think that it's an endless platform for us to tell. I mean, you could tell stories about anxiety. You could tell stories about your first kiss. You could tell stories about your parent. I mean, I love it. I think our medium is one of the coolest storytelling platforms around, and one of the very few visual storytelling platforms that one person can do it if they wanted. Like, it's very difficult for one person to go make a movie or a TV show, but with like a pencil and some paper, and even if that's all I wanted to do, I could have lined notebook paper and I could still draw a comic all by myself and sell you on all the different emotions, that we'd need. But yeah, I think that's, I think it's one of the best forms of storytelling out there.
How many notebooks do you have around the house or the studio?
It's getting less. I mean, I have little sketchbooks that I keep hanging around for, like, because I do my daily sketches, but so I'm not wasting paper. You'll see, like, I'm just kind of working out, like getting the general idea real quick before I take it to page. So I keep these around. And then it's funny, like, then I'll have these, I've got these for different, where I'll jot things down. But a lot of times, I mean, now that we have these and iPads, those usually end up being my quick notes, like where I'll write, like I have a note where it's just story ideas. And so anytime like a thing comes up, I write down the story. Like, let me see, like what my last one was. Something popped up the other day. Whatever. Oh, or I'll write down quotes that people say out in the world. Like the other day, we were at a French restaurant here, outside, and I said something about hurting or something like that. And he goes, "Oh, that's okay. Pain is just information." But he said it in a funny French accent. And I was like, "Pain is just information" is the best line I have ever heard. And it's definitely going in my book, like one of my books. Because I was like, that is fantastic. He's like, "Oh, don't worry. Pain is just information." And I'm like, and I instantly, write that down.
With you saying that, I'm just imagining a Russian guy with
I don't know. That's why I pretend that was
while his cat is his arm is being cut. Don't worry, but the pain is just information.
Yeah. So things like that. But I mean, there's definitely sketchbooks and notebooks kind of everywhere. I wish I was better at keeping notebooks, because what'll happen if you go through like my notebooks, like all there'll be about 20 pages filled with stuff, and then it's gone, and then it's empty. and then I'll start another one. So I'm not really great at notebooking or sketchbooking like I should be. Sketchbooks are a lot different because, like I said, I use them truly as sketchbooks where I am working things out.
Yeah.
I'm always jealous of the people when I flip through the sketchbook and I'm like, this is a sketchbook. This is like a fully finished art book, you know?
Well, yeah, many times I ask them that. It's like, is this really a sketchbook?
Right.
Well, it is. Like, okay. Right. Do you have one near your bed for that?
No.
For that crazy moment where the idea comes, like, oh my god, shit! I gotta do this.
That's usually where I'll just grab the phone and just, you know, I have the notebooks where I have the story ideas, but I'll usually just jot that down. But I think I used to keep one by the bed, but that's actually not where I get a lot of my ideas. I'll get my ideas like when I'm sitting out on my back porch listening to music, or I probably need like a waterproof one for the shower. That's usually like if I really need to think about things, I just go take a shower.
Yeah, I have a friend who yells notes at Siri.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, because
he's in the shower and he has, you know, one HomePod or whatever in the
right.
Which you think is great to have a HomePod in the fucking bathroom. You're gonna probably gonna die in 2 months. Has one just yells the ideas to Siri in the bathroom. He says it's going good. It's going straight to my notebook in the phone.
That's a good idea. It's a good idea. I'll have to use that one too.
For you, what is the most unique? The thing that makes comics different. I mean, to the other narrative art form. The thing that you think that only comics can do.
Well, the fact that we are a visual medium, I think, it carries a huge part of the weight in that. If I go to the bookstore and I look at the cover of a novel, these could be artistic as anything, but I don't know that it necessarily always can really give me all the angles of what I'm getting ready to get into. Like, you know, I mean, even if I look at the cover of and I had the It book when, like, Stephen King's It, when I was a kid, and it had Pennywise on the cover, and I think the first one, the original one, just had like a green claw coming out. You know, those are great images, but I don't know at all what I'm getting ready to get into. I don't know the style of book I'm getting ready to read, which I'm not saying is necessarily bad, but I love the idea that based on the style of the artwork that I'm looking at on a cover, there's a sense of, like, when I look at the cover of like Arkham Asylum, you know, that Bill Sienkiewicz painted, I absolutely, like, if you had me a novel that said Arkham Asylum on it, and it would obviously probably have an asylum building or something, right? I'd be like, oh, cool. That's but seeing Bill Sienkiewicz's painting on the front, I get a sense of what I'm getting ready to get into. Like, I know how to set my mind. I'm going to be like, ooh, I'm going to be taking on a very unique ride. Versus if you give me a book, you know, drawn by Sarah Pacelli, or fill in the blanks of a much more elegant artist, I know what I'm into. But I usually like it for the emotional books, like, you know, Three Shadows. Like Cyril Pedrosa's Three Shadows is one of my favorite graphic novels of all time, and I love that because that book tells me that it's going to be whimsical based on the artwork, and then when the very first few pages, when you read it, you realize, oh, this book needs to look whimsical because it's getting ready to absolutely devastate me, right? And there's like the duality of that, and that book telling you right away that it can do that, I think makes comics one of the most important ways of telling stories, because visuals mixed with the writing can go really well together, or they can intentionally conflict with each other. And I find that to be a really fun way to tell stories.
It's also about the full control that you guys as creators have of time and space that only comics have, right? I always say that comics is the only art form that can defy Einstein's theory of relativity. Right. And if you know that, what I mean with this is, in other art form, you know, the movie just goes like this. You have to go like this. The novel has to go like this. But in comics, you can just go back. You can stay 20 pages in the same moment. You can go back and forth. You can, use a cap. The cap is like this. And then in the next panel, I show it like this with some dripping. And you're telling time has passed and all that. So
Absolutely.
you can control it. Do you think that can be done in any other art form than comics?
The closest that you can do it would be television now, because of the nature in which we watch television. When shows, Lost was a good example of that, right? Like Lost was a very good example of comic books, which ends up being written by comic book people half the time. But yeah, it kind of jumped around like we do in comics. And we kind of hope that you don't necessarily remember exactly what we did 3 years ago, so we can play with that a little bit. No, I totally agree. But I don't think that they can do it as fluidly as we can, because we have such a control of the scene and the characters, where filming stuff still these things have to exist, or you have to rebuild the set, or you have to go back and do all that. And there's so many hoops and people and gatekeepers along the way as well. Like we're one of the very few art forms that, like I said, one person can do it. And like I could put a 100-page comic online today that no one besides me has read.
Yeah, and it's also about that thing about the budget, right? You don't have a budget, so you can create the craziest things in a deadline. Yes, we know there's a deadline, but you remember, if you can talk about something, or you are Jorge or yourself when you're doing it all, you can just think about what I'm going to do, and you don't have a producer or anybody else saying, "Oh, that's going to be too expensive." It's just, do I want to make the effort to do that crazy thing?
Right, and I love that we are able to control time in a way that no other medium really is, because as comic book readers, you understand that when that space between two panels, we understand that things happen there, and we fill in the blank, and that blank might be 5 minutes, and that blank might be 5 years, but we go with it. There's no other thing that you can do. Like, one of my tricks that I do all the time is I'll hit a 2-page sequence where I'm like, all right, boom, 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 boom. This is a month or whatever. And the reader knows what's going on. And that's harder to do when you're talking about a movie or even a novel, where I almost have to explicitly tell you time is passing right now, but in comics, we can tell you that 3 days had passed by changing the color temperature up and down to show you day to night, day to night, day to night. And I don't ever have to use the words the next day,
Yeah. And you can also use, do you like to use colors as sounds? To transmit feelings of sounds, not literally, but you know what I mean? Like I go yellow or I go red, and I'm telling you something is going to happen.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Jean Francois has been with me now for 15, 16 years, maybe. He's been coloring stuff, either my stuff or the books that I'm working on with other artists, and color has been such an important thing. I actually had a chance to talk to a very big animation person the other day, which we'll find out about that later, but that one of the books that I have is the Pixar color script book, which shows every movie, and it's basically the entire movie in color, little like thumbnail paintings, and you can see the have you ever seen this book?
No. I'm really getting really curious about it.
Hold on 1 second. I think this is it. Yeah. So every book that they do, or every movie that they do, they will do a color script, and that is like little drawings where you will see the whole movie in thumbnail form. I think this is. But what happens is you watch the color temperature change, and you can see it all in real time in thumbnail form. So like, okay, right about this point in the movie. I don't think this is it. This is the art of Pixar. Yeah, now I'm boring everybody. Oh yeah, here it is. So this is it. But you can kind of see where it just takes the stuff, and it's like Finding Nemo, where you can see where the whole scripts will go from the different color temperatures.
Yeah.
And they started doing that, and I was like, oh my gosh. So we would go and thumbnail out our thing, and like you'd watch it go from cool to warm, and here's the climax, and you take your story through that. So that's something else that we have a really, really good control over. And like you said, we can that, like when somebody gets really mad or they're going to scream and all of a sudden we color them bright red, that's not what color they are. Yep. But we can do that. And in comics, we all accept it. Like it's because we understand it's a language. Like comics is not just an art form. It's also a language. Like we're speaking, we figured out a new way to speak to each other and convey ideas and emotions.
And when you're writing it, when you're working with an artist or even yourself, you write the story, have a certain ideas about what's going to happen and the stories you're going to tell. How often when you get the art back, do you realize, oh, no, this is better. How often does the art give you new ideas about the story?
Actually, it does. Like the only time that I think that it really does is when it's actually, this is where I think the collaboration is great, is it doesn't actually change my ideas, but what I love is when like Jorge will come back and say, or he'll in the thumbnails, he'll be like, hey, I added this panel or tweaked this. And I'm like, that's a great idea. Like, awesome. And that kind of collaboration. But I'm kind of like, I have a lot of friends that will go back like once the art's done and kind of do a rewrite, like the script pass or whatever, or the lettering pass. And because I learned so long as an artist where I was just like, I'm done with the page. Like I'm done with the page, now every now and then it's not an idea, but like certain words like that doesn't make as much sense as I thought it did now that I see it. So I might change the wording of something, or what I'll realize is, I had half a conversation in my head and I don't think that I realized I didn't put it on paper. Like, sometimes I'm like, I don't think the reader knows what I was thinking when I said this. So I need to be a little bit more clear. But as far as like big ideas, I usually just kind of go, well, that's where I let the editors, like, especially like it's different on the creator and stuff, but like Strange Academy, that's where I let the editors kind of guide me and say like remind me if I've missed anything. But a lot of times I kind of treat it like I do art, where I'm like, I had the idea and I was feeling it that day, and there it is. That's where I kind of like the idea of let's go with it, and see what happens.
That takes me to another one. Is I just blanked. No, I'm sorry. When you work in creator owned, and when you work in corporation owned, I hate that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, big too. Yeah.
Do you use different muscles, or it's the same one just used in a different way because you have a safety net, which with the editors, how those characters should behave, but with the others, your characters, you are making them up in a way on the fly. You're making them real.
Yeah, I don't view it any different. I would maybe if I was newer, but if I would have started writing earlier, maybe. But now that I've been with Marvel for almost 20 years now, so I know what I can and can't do there. And when I say that, I'm not saying like, oh, they won't let me. I'm just saying like I understand what we do as a company there. Like I understand what we want to represent, and so I know how to handle the characters and the stories. So really it's just a matter of like going like, okay, just remember here, I can't cuss. And also like I don't cuss in my creator owned books. I'll cuss in the script to my people. They'd be like, oh, make this fucking awesome, but I won't do that in the Marvel scripts because I don't know where these scripts might end up. Like they might put a script in the back of the trade. Like, so if I'm writing a book, if I'm writing little Marvels, giant size little Marvels, I probably shouldn't be like, cussing in the script or whatever. But it's just it's little things like that. That's really the only difference. But I actually like the note process at Marvel. Nick Lowe and Danny have been really great on Strange Academy. I'm always ready for way more notes. Like the last script I turned in, I actually told Megan and my wife, I was like, I'm probably going to be busy for the next 2 days doing almost a full rewrite of that script. I don't think I nailed it. And then of course it's like the least notes I've ever gotten. Nick's like, oh my God, this is great. And so it was just that one of those moments where I was too in it. And I thought like, God, I like this, but did I sell it? And so it worked. But I like they always have really good suggestions. I like that they give notes, but also nudge you with some ideas. For me, it's always very hard to be like, here, like this part didn't work. that's it. Like, oh, I don't know what to do with that because I still think it works.
Yeah.
But so yeah, the biggest difference is I have to write it, send it off, and then prepare to do a little tweaking. But by a little tweaking, usually, I mean, in the 12 issues of Strange Academy I've written, I mean, I'm talking panels tweak, maybe every now and then a page, but so yeah, it's not too different between the two.
Yeah, and also I've worked with Nick for the last, since he was an assistant too, and there's something I know, and I know you'll agree, he's amazing at notes. He gives really good notes.
Right, he's very excited to be making comics. He's happy, like you said. We've known him forever, so you can trust that he's not just doing. There's nothing worse than notes for notes' sake.
Yes, and we also have suffered those.
Yeah. I'm really not into notes for notes' sake, which I don't feel like I ever get from Nick. And also, I think one of the great things about Nick is, you know, I'll take some notes, and some notes I'll say, I get what you're saying, but I still think this way. And he's like, cool, you know. And I think that we're all just mature storytellers, and we know where to pick our battles. You know, like I'm like, I don't necessarily agree with that one, but it's not a hill I don't need to die on that hill today. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Daniel Puch asks you what are your main influences as an artist?
Oh man, it's interesting because they just change all the time, right? Mm-hmm. The internet has made that change because when I was coming up, we didn't have the internet. We just had comics, right? So I had my favorite comics, but my biggest influences are Bill Watterson, who did Calvin and Hobbes. Chris Bichello is one of my favorites of all time. I think he is just a genius. I think he is one of the few artists out there, and again, I'm going to throw Umberto in that area as well, that it is hard to believe when you look at their artwork that they're not some young scrappy kid who's just starting out and they're like a brand new style. Like when I see those two guys draw books, I'm like, it's very possible their art style is more relevant and like modernized today than it's ever been. And they were always the tip of the sword of stylization and drawing outside the box. So I love it that two like seasoned pro vets draw like they are 25 and still trying to and dunking every day. Like it's very easy when you know you don't have to dunk anymore to like sit back and chill out. And those two guys, I feel like nobody's ever told them that they can sit and chill out. They dunk. So Umberto and Chris are really big. I love, but then I jump outside of that, and I love like Ashley Wood and Sam Keith, and Tony Sandoval, Cyril Pedrosa, Sean Tan from Australia, like all types of artists in different mediums, you know, whether it be children's books or just painting or whatever. So over the years, and then of course everybody in Mad Magazine, right? Jack Davis is one of my favorites of all time. Duck Edwing was one of my favorites. So there's that whole, and Sergio Aragones obviously is just a god to me. So yeah, the list could keep going and going and going.
Have you and Bachalo ever worked together in an ongoing in a big book?
Nope. We I really tried to get him right when I got the Deadpool job. Mm-hmm. I really wanted him on because he was getting ready to wrap up. I forget what he was working on at the time.
Wolverine and the X-Men, probably, right?
Probably. You know, it might have been a little after that. I can't remember where he was, but I think he was just doing an X-Men thing.
Oh, okay.
But I really tried to get him on Deadpool, and we got close, but unfortunately, some family stuff happened at that time. I know. Yeah, and it was a little too, you know, completely understandable. So that was I almost got to work with one of my favorite artists of all time. But there's still hope there one day that I'll be able to to something for him for sure. I have gotten him to do covers for me before, so that's really cool. But he's still one of those guys I haven't met in real life. I've talked to him on the phone, and I remember the first time he called me on the phone, I just fumbled. Just was like didn't stop talking, but I don't know that I was saying anything. I was just nervous.
I have a story about how amazing a guy he is. Many years ago, back in what he was doing before, even I think he was doing Generation X. He was starting to work at Marvel, right after Shade and the DC stuff. And I interviewed him. And back in that day, you had to send, I sent him the interview by regular mail because I didn't have the money to have a fax machine.
Right.
From Spain all the way to Canada. He sent it back. And I said, my wife, do you remember the IRC channels?
What, IRC?
Yeah, the IRC chat channels on the internet. The first chat channel.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where I met my wife. We made the joke about we are the original internet couple. That's many years ago. And her nickname was Rogue back at that day because I was her favorite character.
Sure.
And because of Chris Bacalo's Rogue.
That's
so I just told Chris on that letter, just so you know, my girlfriend then loves your Rogue. He thinks you're the best artist who's ever drawn that character. So I get the interview, the answers back by regular mail 15 days, 20 days later, and it was this big envelope with protection. He got an 11x17 and he drew an ink Rogue for my wife.
Awesome. That's so awesome.
And I every time I talk about him or to him, I still remind him of that's how I knew you're an amazing human being aside of mine, because I never asked for anything. I just mentioned that because he asked you and you just did it.
That's so great. He never ceases to, like, he randomly he'll say something on Twitter about me or something very nice. But one of my favorite things is there was the Marvel art of SKOTTIE YOUNG book or whatever, and they went and grabbed quotes from people, and I didn't realize they were doing that, but because I had talked so much about him as an influence, they went and got quotes from him. And of course now I get to forever have like a Chris Bacalo quote about my artwork. Printed in a book for all time. So yeah, I'm still a little kid when I think about him.
Absolutely. Dante Crottigioni says, I don't know if you've talked about it. Yes, we have. But I love Middle West. Wish there had been more scenes between Abel and Fox in the last issue, though. The art was phenomenal all the way through.
Thanks. Yeah, it was interesting when you get to the end because there's so many things to tie up, and you realize, and I just realized that, the story was about Abel and Dale, his dad, and you realize Fox was there for what Fox needs to be there for, and then that role for that ending wasn't as necessary at the moment, and it was really signifying that Abel can make his Jiminy Cricket of sorts didn't need to be there. He had learned all his lessons, or the big lessons that he needed for that ending.
But that was part of the point, right? Not needing Fox to become himself to make those decisions.
Exactly.
Felipe Gonzalez Hernandez says, many thanks for your work. Many thanks for I Hate Fairyland, the best mother fluffer comic book in the world with Gertrude and Larry. Was it the ending that you planned to do since the beginning?
Oh, I Hate Fairyland. No, there's no I Hate Fairyland. I even say at the end of, I can't remember if it's a single issue or the trade or what, but I definitely wrote at the end of the issue, single issue, I think, that it's not the permanent end. Like Fairyland will definitely come back. Like, and that's why I was like, it's the ending that I wanted to end and pause on there, just because I thought it's a funny ending. But the beautiful thing about that book is there's no ending it. Like that will be my character that I will probably revisit until I'm done doing all this. And so you may very well see her again this year. I'm not sure, but I definitely am getting an itch to. And the great thing about stories with her is they can be 10 pages, they can be 100 pages. Like it's so open to doing fun stuff. So you'll definitely see Gert and Larry in the squad again sometime.
That's something that I love about that book that you just mentioned, is that you could tell smaller story just based on an idea or a gag, or just go longer because that moment asks you for something much longer, right? And you can just move between longer sort of stories and at whatever pace. Even do a whole mini series based on smaller, shorter ideas you had, right?
Yep, exactly.
Sorry if you Dante asked, sorry if you already answered this, but how long do you plan Strange Academy to go for?
Right now, we have it planned for 24 issues. The story that we're telling right now. So that doesn't mean that it's over at that. It doesn't. But I have a plan for 24 issues at the moment.
24 issues. Okay.
Yeah.
Humberto says, "Oh, you are in YouTube too." And Dante Cortiglione says, "Chuan Bacalo would be a dream team." Daniel Puch says, "Bacalo is one of my favorites." Humberto too. And Humberto says, "Daniel Puch, he's one of mine too." Yes.
Right.
But we know that. Dante Cortiglione says, "Humberto is amazing too. One of the best Spider-Man artists of all time. And also the best Strange Academy artist of all time." Just so you know.
There you go.
And Daniel Puch, Humberto, I have all the issues from out there. Great work. Hola, Humberto, desde Colombia. Okay, you are all saying hello to everybody now. So let's focus, guys. Let's focus. Last stop before I let you leave, because I can feel Megan with an axe behind my back. I'm kidding. What is next for you? What is the thing that? Oh no, what is next? Let me go around that. Is there any stories that you've been stopping yourself from telling because you feel, you know what? I love this idea, but I'm not ready to tell it yet. I need more life to say it in a way. But you know that sooner or later, before you retire or die, I will say die because I don't ever see you retiring of this. You have much fun with comics.
Yeah.
Is there a story there that you know you're going to tell sooner or later, but you stop yourself from telling now because you feel you're not ready?
I don't know that it's that I'm not ready. I do have a story that I can't crack. And for those of you who follow me online for any amount of time will notice my character Boy, who's the little gas mask hat kid, and I use him to do little studies on life and questions of what things are about and just exploration of emotion and things like that. And there's a story there. There's a book there for him. And it's different. It's one of those things where it's different. And it's going to be it's something, but it's eluding me. And every time I post one, of course, my comments are like, when are we getting a Boy book? When are we getting a Boy book? And I'm like, I am asking the same thing. It's like trying to find that balance of maintaining what this character means to me and telling a story, but also not getting lost in the esoteric nature of it, because I don't want it just to be so indulgent. So it's really just finding it. So it's not that I'm not ready. It's that I haven't cracked that story's code yet.
Yeah.
I haven't found it. So that's, and it's starting to bug me. So I'm like, and now, so really what's one of my big goals, and I just talked to my wife about it last night, was I'm getting ready to set up some week or two here coming up where I just go grab an Airbnb somewhere, go there by myself and figure his story out, where there's no interruptions. I don't have to stop at 5, or I don't have to grab lunch at, where it's just, I'm just going to focus on this and dive in and really make a run at it. And I think that's really all I need to do, because, getting trapped in the day-to-day of the grind, it's hard to shove in coming up with a brand new thing from, oh, I've got a meeting here and I've got a meeting here. So, hey, between there, let me think of my next genius idea.
We just have like 5 more questions. Do you have time for some more? Or do you need to?
Yeah, I'll take a couple more, and then I've got to run.
Couple more, yeah. Aside of Humberto saying hello to everybody. Let me see. I love this one. Daniel Puches, do you plan on teaching about comics in the future, like online classes or videos? If you do, let me know. I'm interested.
I do YouTube videos where I talk about topics, and they're shorter, like 15-minute topics, where I'll do a daily sketch and talk about different things. I'll be honest, I don't know that the only way that I'd be a good teacher is if you really like your teacher to not know a lot, but have a lot of weird gut instinct. Most of the time, my answers are, I don't know. And hey, why do you do this? I don't know. I try this and it worked, and I think this is why it works. And I've learned this, or what's the secret here? This or maybe that. I don't know. Like I'm not a rules person, and therefore for me, like, and here's the other thing: I'm not great at prep, so the amount of work that it takes. I envy teachers and people who have teaching in their nature as a skill set. I admire them, and I would not ever put myself in that category and tarnish their awesome titles, because I don't put in the work ahead of time to prep a lesson. I do a lot of making shit up on the fly. and then like, oh, wait a minute, that did sound kind of good. Maybe but yeah. So the best you'll probably get from me is, like I said, like my YouTube videos and little tutorials in there and there for smaller things. But I'm very much a like go hunt it out and just try things kind of person.
Okay. And the last one, there's more, but we said a couple more. Sorry, guys.
Right.
Dante Cortiglioni asks, do you think you'll ever work as an artist with another writer again, or you will only draw your own scripts?
Probably only draw my own scripts. I mean, I won't say never. Like I could probably see if, Jason Aaron's one of my best buddies and lives really, close to here. I could see us like doing something for fun, or, doing smaller things here or there. But most of the drawing comics takes a long time, and time is not something that I can grow more of on trees. So for me, if I'm gonna spend the time drawing the pages, I think I have a lot of ideas that I'm trying to get to, and so it'll probably be from here on out. Unless, I mean, listen, if Neil Gaiman hits me up, that might be a different story, right? But I loved working with Neil. But yeah, for the most part, it's probably going to be me drawing my own stuff.
So, guys, I know you have more questions. There will be other occasions, but this guy has to go back to his
I would love to come back and visit.
Thank you so much. And
awesome.
When the conventions are back, I hope that. But I know I'm going to see you in the US, but I hope that sometime you can come to Spain so people.
I would love that. Love that so much.
So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It was a great time. I just loved being able to just chat with a buddy. That's what it felt like. So it was. I love these. These are my favorite kind of interviews to spend time doing. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Please don't cut, because I want to say proper thank you when we're off the air.
Will do.
To all of you, thank you so much for being here. Tomorrow we're going to have, let me remember. Tomorrow we're going to have Jaime Martin, amazing Spanish artist. On Thursday we're going to have another master, like Scottie, Stan Sakai of Usagi Yojimbo. You know who he is, I think. And yes. On Friday we're going to have Nachi Marsham, formerly of Disney, formerly of DC Comics, and now the publisher IDW. So I hope to see you here all. Again, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Scottie.
Thank you.
And we're off. Have a good day.
I just saw you were right. It is Dave McKean. I just saw, I was like, oh, even as I was saying, I was like, that's not Bill.
Yes, but I didn't want to say it. I know,
you should have corrected me, man. I was like, no. I'm okay. I'm okay getting smacked around.
I don't do that with my friends. I just send you a quick note saying, no, it's not. Thank you all. See you back tomorrow. And we're off in